And let's see, and so this is our second in the series now, but it's the first day that we've been doing the trainings out of this grant. And so we want to, again, thank Bay Area UASI and San Francisco CARD, the VOAD, or yeah, they're not the VOAD, are they? But thank you to San Francisco CARD for administering the grant and helping us to get this training out to all of you. We do have some of the other trainers from some of the other hubs, the North Bay hub, so welcome them. And let's go on. I think next is the agenda, and so I'm going to turn it over to our main trainer for this afternoon, Rich Saito, who is retired San Jose Police and also a member of the CADRE board. So I'm going to let him go ahead and go over the objectives for today.
Okay, thank you, Marcia and Anna. Good afternoon, everybody. Our objectives are to prepare your staff and you for basically Tier 1 preparedness, emergency preparedness. When I do this, I like to provide you with a framework about how to address all hazards, and we'll talk about that in a second. I'd ask that the assumptions is that we have a lot of either CERT people, community emergency response team members, or emergency managers or first responders, and we'd like to be able to have you, contribute and share your information with us. So please feel free to do that. There's going to be about 30 of us, so it'd probably be better if we did that in the chat. However, we're not against having you unmute yourself and contribute verbally so that everybody can hear us.
Hey, Rich, can you try
yes.
putting the microphone closer to your mouth?
How's that?
That sounds better.
Okay, thank you. This morning we talked about the assessment tool. Tier 1 is personal safety, basic life survival skills. Tier 2 deals with your organization. And Tier 3 talks about your role in helping the community, basically preparation, response, and recovery for the community. And so again, what I'm going to cover today is basically Tier 1, the bottom level. We want to identify threats. We want to identify who the stakeholders are, who should be involved. You want to make a plan for each of the different threats, and you're dealing with all of the areas at the bottom of that Tier 1. So it's personal preparedness, designating or setting up an emergency coordination team, emergency alerts, communications, procedures, resilient facilities, and hazard assessment. The other thing that we want to do in the time of the pandemic is to see if we can apply any of this to the constraints that are set in place by the pandemic and the COVID virus. So our guidelines, again, we want you to either create or review your own emergency preparedness plan, share ideas, add comments or questions, and share your expertise, what works, what doesn't work. When you talk about disasters in this area, most people think of earthquake. Of course, there's fires. We had a good discussion this morning about the public safety power shutoffs, and we'll do a little bit more about that a little bit later on. We've had some minor flooding in San Jose along either the two creeks, Guadalupe or Coyote. And then I'm sure all the other counties, Santa Cruz, Monterey, and San Benito, have their flood prone or flood plain areas also. And then the other thing that I've been getting a lot of requests to help nonprofits with is how do you prepare for and respond to an active shooter? So we're going to briefly go over that also. But it can apply to any crime type situation, anything from a simple burglary to a robbery to an actual active shooter, a Columbine type thing. the thing that we ask you to consider is that each one of those hazards is a unique and separate entity, and it requires its own plan. The resources that you need, the facilities, the tools, the equipment, the knowledge, the training for each one of those is separate. So actually what you should end up with is a binder with all of these different things in it, plus whatever else is germane to your area. Let's see. So why should you prepare? As I'm sure you are all aware, that in an actual regional disaster, public safety, EMS are going to be overwhelmed. They're not going to be able to respond to each and every individual request for service. So the Office of Emergency Services recommends that you be prepared to maintain yourself, preserve yourself, and take care of yourself for 5 to 7 days, maybe longer. Power safety public shutoffs have been averaging about 3 to 4 days. You want to make sure that you are adequately prepared to provide for your basic needs. So let's talk about the preparedness process. This is not by any means linear, and you'll see how I put this into a template a little bit later on. But basically, the first thing is you want to identify what threats are germane to your area. Santa Cruz County, Monterey County, San Benito, and Southern Santa Clara County each have different regional areas. They have different threats. So the first thing you have to do is identify your threats, do a threat assessment. The next thing you do is within your areas, you want to think about who is involved. And we're talking primarily about two situations, your family at home or your coworkers at work. Again, very different situations. The knowledge that each group has to have, the supplies, the equipment, the tools, the evacuation plans, communication, everything has to be separate for each of those scenarios. Make a plan for each one. Get your tools, equipment, modify your facilities to increase resiliency, and practice your response. And then after, the most important thing is the assessment. What went well and what needs to additional improvement. So we're looking at the bottom of the slide. It's got tier 1 on it. Each of those elements in the bottom of that slide is contained in this process. So threat assessment, who's involved, what do you need to know, what are your options, how do you communicate, what things do you need to get, how do you practice, and it's a continual cycle of evaluation. Any questions or anything? Okay. Anybody want to add anything? All right. So the next thing is wherever you are, one thing that we recommend that you do is you take a step back and fly at the 30,000 level and look down at your community and try to assess what you have and what you need there. So in the upper left-hand corner, you're going to see the SWOT analysis, SWOT. You want to think about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for your neighborhood. And as an example, I've put up a map of Japantown in North San Jose, which is where my CERT team is in Japantown. So it's basically from Mission to Empire, from 3rd to 7th Street. When we talked about the strengths, this is a very cohesive community. Japanese Americans have been in this community for over 3 generations. Actually, my kids are 4th generation. So they go to the 2 churches, either a Christian church or a Buddhist church, and everybody knows everybody. When one place has a festival, like if the Buddhist church has Obon, the people from the Christian church go and help, and vice versa. So it's a very cohesive community. If anybody needs anything, they all pitch in to help. So that's they call it Tasukeiao in Japanese. It's a community service. So the weaknesses, the other thing about Japanese culture is they have a phrase, it's called shigataganai. And what that means is it can't be helped. It's kind of fatalistic, if you will. So, hey, if earthquake happens, shigataganai, can't be helped. you can't stop an earthquake, so don't worry about it. Well, I'm trying to overcome that. That's one of the challenges that I face in working with the older Japanese people. The opportunities we have, again, with the cohesive community, we have a lot of different resources. So I'll bring up the next part of this slide. And we have a park in the upper right-hand corner. We have a middle school, Ohlone Middle School, up in the upper left. We have the Akiyama Senior Wellness Center on the left, and that's one of my shelters, along with the Buddhist Church Gym and the Methodist Church Gym. So those are my Red Cross certified disaster shelters. Now, during the pandemic, if you've looked at the Red Cross protocol for shelters, they've been shifting away from what they call congregate shelters, or large open areas with cots in them, to what they call non-congregate shelters, basically hotel rooms or condos or apartments. If at all possible, if they have a choice, they're going to go for a non-congregate shelter. They want to keep people separate. We have a couple of other things in that slide. On Taylor Street, there's a line, a red line. I'm not sure if you can see it because on my screen, the participants cover part of it, but that is a 13-inch high-pressure PG&E natural gas pipeline. It's very similar to the one that was that blew up in San Bruno. So right next to that is the Fuji Towers Senior Center. That's a 100-unit senior center, apartments. It's right next to that gas line. So we've been working with the management of Fuji Towers to make sure their people are prepared. The other thing which is kind of interesting in our community is in the lower left-hand corner, you're going to see what looks like a railroad train, and then the dotted line is the railroad line. Cuts across North San Jose, and on that line are oil tankers, and they roll through there every night. There's a lot of controversy with those because because there's homeless people living on the tracks. They have to sound their horns, and it wakes everybody up at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. So they're trying to create what's called a quiet zone. But the bad thing about having oil tankers roll through your neighborhood is if they get involved in a crash or one of them derails, you could have leaking oil. It might catch fire. It might cause what's called a boiling liquid evaporating vapor explosion. Basically, that railroad car becomes a big bomb. If a levee goes off, it has the ability or the capability of devastating everything within a 1 mile square area. So for our southern neighbors, I know you have railroad lines in Santa Cruz, San Benito, and Monterey County. If you're in near one of those rail lines, you want to make sure that you account for what to do about that if you get a derailment or a levee. Okay. So disaster communications. In the earlier session this morning, we talked about ways to get alerts. I know each county has the ability to send out alerts. In Santa Clara County, it's SCC Alert. So it's an application you put on your cell phone. And every once in a while, I'll get an alert about something or other that's going on in our county. You want to be able to take advantage of that. There is an application also that I've been working with. It's called My Shakes, and supposedly it's run out of the Berkeley School of Geology, I believe. And they put sensors throughout California. And if there's an earthquake coming, you can get up to 5 to 10 seconds worth of advance warning. I've gotten some mixed results with it. There are several other ones that are being developed. But if you can get those kind of alerts, 10 seconds is a lot of time to be able to find some place to seek cover or shelter before the earthquake actually hits. When the disaster actually happens, you won't be able to count on a landline, and you probably won't be able to count on a cell phone. What I've heard is that if 10% of the cell phone customers try to access a cell line, a cell signal, it overloads the system and shuts it down. So you won't be able to make a cell phone call. What I've also been told is that you can send text messages because they use less bandwidth. So if you can't make the call, you might try sending a text. If you have access to Wi-Fi, or if your phone is a mobile hotspot, you might be able to access social media. The other thing that we recommend are ham radios. I am a ham radio operator for San Jose RACES, the Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service. I know there were several ham radio operators on the call this morning. In fact, we do our Tuesday night radio nets every Tuesday. That's also a good way to build community and to establish a communication system within your region. FRS radios have mixed results. We had a CERT group in the Almaden Valley called Almaden Valley Avert, and they used FRS radios. They had a couple hundred FRS radios throughout South San Jose, the Almaden Valley area. But they've kind of fallen into disuse. Most of the people turn them on, they set them down, they don't necessarily pay attention to them. So if you decide to set up something like that, either FRS or MERS radios, you want to make sure you have a protocol where at least during a disaster, everyone turns that thing on and communicates with each other. Who has needs, who can offer help, how can they work together? If nothing else, you may have to send runners. So in Japantown, we're very fortunate. I'm about 8 blocks from the fire station and about 10 blocks from the police station. So you can actually physically walk there if you have to. So during the pandemic, you want to refer to your county's public health officer for guidelines. They've been pretty consistent on the basics, which is masks, social distancing, frequent cleaning, and then screenings. My CERT team, for example, for you CERTs, we're in the process of developing a protocol that if we do a search and rescue mission and we encounter somebody who needs to be rescued out of a house, they're going to go through a COVID screening process before we accept them into our triage area. And then, of course, the other thing is we're trying to figure out a way that we can house people before the Red Cross sets up their shelter in either one of our gyms. So basically, we have a classroom building. We're going to put the people spread out 6 feet apart underneath the overhangs on these 2 buildings. Aside from the process for creating a disaster plan, this is the template I was referring to earlier. If there's one thing I'd like you to take away from this presentation, it's this framework. So we have 2 columns. On the left, we have a people column, and on the right side, you have a facility or building column. The rows, the top row is what do you do before, the middle row is what do you do during, and what do you do after. Excuse me. So for the people, you want to make sure you have a disaster mission statement, basically survive and minimize injuries and damage. And then who is involved? So again, for home and work, it's 2 totally separate populations. At home, you may have, a significant other, you may have children, you may have senior parents or other relatives or roommates. You want to think about each and every single one of those people individually. And again, you're going to do a SWOT analysis on them. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are their opportunities? What are their threats? If you have a medical person, that's great. If you have a first responder with you, that's great. If you have a construction worker, that's great, because they know how to shore up buildings and take care of problems with your actual facility. And then the same thing goes with your building. Your home, we're going to go through an assessment process for that, your work, and you want to make sure that you increase the resilience capacity of your building. You want to get your supplies, first aid kit, flashlights, how to access your building or actually evacuate from your building on all 4 sides. During the actual event, whatever it is, of course, don't panic. You want to be a leader. You want to take care of yourself, take care of the others around you. And then if you go to the top of the pyramid, you want to think about how do you help your neighbor. So like during the Loma Prieta earthquake, you know, I drop, cover, and hold. I checked the inside and outside of my house, and then I went and checked on my neighbors on both sides. They're both about the same age as I am. They're a little bit older, so I want to make sure that they're both okay. And then the final part, if you're going to have a comprehensive plan, you want to think about how to care for yourself after. Let's talk about mental trauma, getting spiritual support, repairing things, basically looking at all your family members, your coworkers, and your facility and what needs to be fixed and repaired. Okay, so again, that's a basic framework. If I'm at the grocery store, if I'm picking up my kids from school, if I go to an entertainment venue, if I'm at work, as I go in and out of these facilities on a constant basis, I have that framework in my mind. If something were to happen now, who are the people that I'm with? What are their, basically the things they have that can help me? Who do I need to take care of? Do I have somebody who has access and functional needs? What kind of equipment, supplies do I have nearby? Where are the escapes? Where's the fire alarm? Is there a sprinkler system? And then what are my escape routes? The other thing, which when we get to the crime thing, we're thinking about cover and concealment. Concealment is the ability to hide from a threat. For example, walls are concealment. They are not cover because they will not stop bullets. Bullets go right through sheetrock. It goes through stucco. It generally does not go through masonry or brick. So ideally, as you go through life, if you're thinking about protecting yourself, you want to think about where can I get cover? If you're outside in the open, what part of a vehicle provides cover? The engine block, basically. The engine block may be the tires. The rest of the car, the doors, the body of the car, the trunk and the hood, they don't provide cover. Bullets goes through that. Okay. Any questions about this framework? Please put it in the chat or unmute yourself and answer right up. Okay, so you got this handout before you registered for this class. Again, this is that same template, people on the left, building on the right, before, during, and after. What I'd like to have us do is go through the public safety power shutoff. So we're going to do this for your family. So who's involved? And what are their needs? Do they have a CPAP? Are they diabetic? Do they have to have refrigerated insulin? In this morning, they talked about, the morning session, they talked about powered wheelchairs. If you don't have power for 2, 3, 4 days, how are you going to be able to get around? On the building side, you basically have 4 options. You can either sit in the dark and eat cereal. You can have a generator. And over here, I've got a good old trusty Honda 2000 generator. You can have solar panels. So on my house, I've got 9 N-phase solar panels with in my garage, I've got a Tesla Powerwall. So I've got a couple options. And again, for all of your disasters, you want to think about increasing your options. So do nothing, generator, solar power, or leave. If you have to, you may want to go to some place that you can get power from. So the last power safety public shutoff in Santa Clara County, it went down the East Foothills from Milpitas down across Morgan Hill, and then the very bottom of the Almaden Valley also was in that grid. So all of those places lost power. Thankfully, the majority of the downtown San Jose area, my area, did not lose power. So you won't know until this actually happens. So you will have to assume that if PG&E does a public safety power shutoff, you're going to lose power, and it could be for multiple days. So have your options available to you. Okay. So for your place, who's involved? What are their needs? And what are your options? If the other thing which you've probably seen on the TV is those ads for Generac. That's a home generator. It's actually mounted on a pad outside your home, and they wire it into your electrical system. On the ads, I think they start at $2,000. When I went through the assessment of my house for Generac, it was a $3,000 unit. So, you want to look at your options. The generators the Generac's $2,000 to $3,000. Solar panels are going to be $12,000 to $13,000. And the battery is going to be also $12,000 to $13,000. So during the actual public safety power shutoff, you want to assess as best you can how widespread and how long the threat's going to be. You want to look at your options and pick and choose the options that you think are most appropriate. The other thing which I learned just recently is that if you have to consume your food, you want to consume your perishable food first. So that's the stuff in your fridge. After that, then you consume this, because the stuff in your fridge will last maybe a couple days, 3 days. The stuff in your freezer will last 3 to 4 days if you keep the door closed. And then the last thing that you want to consume are your non-perishable foods, your canned goods and dry goods. So that's a strategy you can use when you're facing an actual PSPS. And then afterwards, of course, you want to do the assessment. Were you able to care for the needs of your people, your family members? Were you happy with the options for your structure, your building, your home? Would you consider adding any more and start planning for those? So any questions about that? Again, this is a mind framed that you can carry with you everywhere you go. When you're driving, when you're shopping, when you're doing entertainment, whatever. You can keep this in the back of your mind. So if I was faced with an emergency right now, who is involved? What are my options? What can I do? Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, Rich, this is Jim Huey. I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any suggestions for those that live in apartments? Because if you're renting an apartment, there are a lot of laws that will not allow you to have like a barbecue.
Yes.
Probably wouldn't even be allowed to keep a gas generator and fuel. It's against the law to have those things at your apartment. So what would be some power options that people living in apartments could use during a PSPS?
Harbor Freight sells those solar panels. They're probably 3 by 3 feet tall with a battery and an inverter controller on it. If you stuck one of those, either up on the roof or on a walkway or in a parking lot or on top of your carport, you might be able to get enough power to keep your basic medical needs going. For my generator, my Honda 2000, my refrigerator requires 6.5 amps of electricity. So the formula is watts equals amps times volts. So 120 volts times 6.5 amps is about 780 watts. So with that generator, I can run a refrigerator, my freezer, my CPAP machine, whatever else I need, a couple light bulbs. Now, again, you can't run that inside your unit. It's got to be outside. So I have a couple of 50-foot extension cords. Working with the landlord for apartment or condo owners, if you can string that out to the outside, either in a parking lot or a back lot, you can actually run the cord into your house. How's that sound, Jim?
No, I would look at those things. I'm thinking more of just in the area of being able to store, like California state law, you cannot have a barbecue or the propane within 10 feet of any combustible material. So if you're living in an apartment with a carport and a storage area, you legally can't have the barbecue and the propane anywhere on the property. Well, if you can't have a propane barbecue, you probably couldn't store a generator and 5 gallons of gas. So that's why I asked the question, what are the options if you're in that kind of a situation in an apartment?
Yeah, then again, if you want to be totally safe and within the law, then solar's your best bet.
Okay. Thanks, man.
Yeah, you bet. Great question. Thank you.
Hey, Rich,
Anything
I'm
else?
going to jump in. Yeah, Rich, I'm going to
Yes.
jump in. Jen with County Fire had comments about propane. Jen, you want to come live?
Yes, please, Jen.
Jen Sinowa. Nope, maybe she doesn't have an ability to unmute. Okay, she's just saying in the chat that small propane bottles are okay for storage indoors, but that's probably like the little ones that go with camp stoves, not the big propane tanks.
Right, not the 20 gallon ones or whatever. Or 5
Yeah, and
gallon.
she's going to give us some information about county fire code for Santa Clara County. I don't know if Marcia or Jennifer Ponce as county or some of our emergency managers, any of the other county emergency managers have any other feedback on that. But yes, thank you. Sorry
Okay,
to butt
great.
in, Rich.
No, that's okay. Anytime, please. So, the other thing, when you're thinking about a comprehensive emergency plan, you want to think about all your basic needs. So I've got my camping tent. I can throw it up in the backyard. Aside from the power generation, I've got a propane heater. It's actually rated for inside use. I just got this. My son gave this to me. So I actually haven't used it yet. But it says it's okay for indoor use with propane. So I've got to figure out what they do with the gases. I've got an LED lamp, and this it charges using the solar panel over there, and it also has a USB port to charge my phone. Of course, you can always charge your phone inside your car too. And then,
or Rich, Ron has his hand raised.
Yes, go ahead, Ron.
Rich, thank you so much. I love what you have. It's a great outlay of equipment, but there's a lot of people in our community that can't afford that. Is there any place that they can go for financing maybe to get some of the supplies, do you know of?
That's a great question. I am not aware of financing. Does anybody have any availability of financing for disaster supplies?
I know, this is Marcia, back in the day, I know a couple of jurisdictions had small grants for neighborhoods, and they would allow them to buy supplies with that. Or garage sales are good places to find some of this, because people aren't thinking of it in terms of disaster. They're just thinking they have too much camping equipment. But a lot of it too, you have to think about comfort versus necessity. So you start making sure that you can maintain yourself, and then what will make it easier. And over time, you can add things to that. I mean, I'm always adding, but I didn't start out that way.
Right, it's a continual process.
Yeah, and for the apartments too, if you can't get your apartment owners to understand that there's a need for earthquake preparedness, or you might want to see if your local emergency manager would give them a call, because I mean, it's in their financial interest to make sure that everybody's fine and dandy when the earthquake's over. So it would be good to invest a little bit to make sure that they can stay safe.
And you can always ask your good friend Sue to speak for you. If he doesn't allow you to prepare yourself and you suffer damages, you can sue him.
So Rich, hang on just a second. I think Luna also had a comment.
Okay, go ahead, Luna.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So you can check with the community foundation of any of these counties. They offer programs usually towards organizations, but you could always work with an NGO to help finance that, especially if it's on a community basis. And that's something I'd like to emphasize, especially for lower income areas where you realistically can't afford a generator or something expensive to prepare. you can pool your resources. You can work with your fellow neighbors in your apartment complex or on your block and see if everyone chips in $20, we can get a stockpile going or some type of supplies going. That would be really helpful, I could think, for an apartment complex. If enough neighbors are willing to do it and you talk to the property manager, there might be a way to pool those resources and get something going for that entire apartment complex. It wouldn't be as effective as, say, having your own generator that lights up an entire room or two in your house. But let's say you did that, you might be able to get a community in your apartment complex fridge, and that room is generator dependent, or it has a generator, so that if there was a PSPS, everyone who has something that's going to go bad today or tomorrow might be able to utilize that. So we don't always have everything we need, and turning to our neighbors, turning to the owners of our apartment buildings, turning to the people around us is a great way to put all our resources together and be better prepared.
Yeah, excellent. Great idea. Communal preparedness. The other thing for our rural neighbors, Santa Cruz, Monterey, and San Benito, some of you may have your water supply provided by the water pressure provided by an electric pump. And during a PSPS, you will not have water. So you want to, be aware of that. You can have a bunch of stockpiled 5-gallon water tanks. And if you don't have water, you're not going to be able to flush your toilet. So you can buy these little bags and you put them in your toilet. You go to the restroom in this, and then you can take it out and dispose of it later when everything's up and running. Okay, so again, kind of think through the process. Okay, any other comments or questions? Great ideas. Okay, so let's talk about the two most common disasters. Fire, again, your options are fight or flight. You fight a small fire or you flee from a large fire. And one of the members of my team is a retired fire captain from San Jose, and he says if things are burning out in the open like a trash can or a stove or something, you can fight that. If it starts to catch the surrounding walls or the structure on fire, that's when you get out. As I'm sure a lot of you are aware, a wildfire can travel extremely fast. If there are bad winds blowing, 30, 40 miles an hour, the fire could actually spread that fast, 30, 40 miles an hour. I've heard that the fires up in the North Bay went across a football field, which is 100 yards, in a couple minutes. So if you live in a rural area, defensible space is very important. Having your evacuation routes on all sides, all four shores, now north, south, east, west. And it's better to get out early than not too early, okay? For small fires, if you get rid of any one of these things, you're going to put out the fire. There's the old thing about the pot of oil boiling on the stove. It boils over, catches fire. The way you put it out is you cover it. You don't put water on it because it just spreads the oil out, makes the fire bigger. Know how to operate a fire extinguisher? Pass. So pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. You're sweeping the base of the fire, not the top of the fire. You want to get where the fire is starting from. Have a fire extinguisher readily available to you. And I'm probably not one to talk, but you should have it recharged periodically. I've got 2 of them in my garage, but I haven't touched them in years, so I've got to get them checked. The other thing is if you go to buy a fire extinguisher, the cheap ones are made out of plastic. They're not refillable. After a while, they lose pressure or all the sodium cakes at the bottom and it becomes useless. So it's probably worth the money to spend a little bit more, get the metal ones that have the meter on it that you can refill and recharge. One of the best ways to avoid a fire is not have the electrical octopus, and don't stack things in hallways. For San Jose Station 1, one of the biggest problems they have is we have a lot of older Victorian homes there with narrow hallways, and people store things in the hallways. Dressers, boxes, excuse me, stuff like that. when a hallway is filled with smoke, you know, maybe the residents might be able to get in, but it creates obstacles. It also creates, combustibles that can burn. So don't store anything in passageways or confined areas. Makes it very hard for the firefighters to get in there and find you. Maintain your smoke alarms. They're requiring carbon dioxide alarms now. So we're done with fires. Anything else about fires? Any of our fire folks?
Yeah, Rich, in the chat box, I know you were busy talking. Jen
Yes.
from County Fire was sharing some resources, a video link on how to use a fire extinguisher, reminding everyone if it's bigger than a trash can, get out and call 911. Don't try and fight it yourself. Lars Eric was sharing a news story that claimed the campfire was at one point 1 football field every 3 seconds. So fires spread very quickly.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Good tips, thank you. So let's move to earthquakes. In a building, everyone says drop, cover, and hold. That I'm sure probably everybody is aware of that. You drop to the floor, cover up your head, turn your back to glass, and then hold on to the furniture because it's going to be bouncing around. If you don't have the ability to get underneath a sturdy table or something, if nothing else, kneel down next to a substantial piece of furniture, a large chair, a sofa. If you happen to be going through a doorway, like during the Loma Prieta earthquake, I was in a doorway. You know, it all of a sudden hit. All I could do was put my hands up on the door frame and brace myself to keep myself from falling over. But then I was facing the door, so I put my foot up so that when the door swings around, it doesn't crush my fingers. If you're facing away from the door, just put your foot back so that it hits, you know, your heel. Again, it's an option. The one thing you don't want to do is run out of a building. If you look at the Fukushima earthquake in Japan, you know, it's a pretty well prepared country, but there were people running out of office buildings in downtown Tokyo during the earthquake, and the sides of those buildings are all glass. The glass is shattering and shards of glass are falling down, and people are running out of the building through a waterfall of glass. You don't want to do that. Don't run over uneven surfaces. In bed, stay in bed, cover yourself up. If it gets really bad, you can lie on the floor next to your bed so that if something falls, it falls on the bed and not on you. The other thing that which we recommend that you do is with your family or your loved ones, start at your front door and walk through your entire house. And, you know, take a look at everything around you. If there was an earthquake that hit, what would fall? Is it a bookcase? Is it a floor lamp? Is it a big, you know, picture with a glass frame on it? Are there porcelain jars or ceramics that might fall over and break? And you want to do that for every single room. And then when you get to the bedroom, do the same thing. What's on the wall above your headboard? Is there anything next to the bed which might fall on the bed? It's a little bit hard to see, but in that plastic bag under her bed is a pair of shoes and a flashlight. I think during the Northridge earthquake, one of the biggest injuries was people cutting their feet on broken glass and ceramics and stuff as they walked over the floor. So keep a pair of old tennis shoes in there. In a vehicle, slow down, pull over to the side. If you have the option, don't park or stop next to a light pole or a telephone pole or a tall building. You know, you want to look at the threats around your vehicle and make sure that if you can, move to an area that's a little bit out in the open. And do we have a chat, Anna?
I think you're good, Rich. Keep going.
Okay, all right. In the open area, same thing. If you're walking on the street, this is 5th and Jackson, Japantown, North San Jose. We see some telephone poles. If you have to, the vehicles, if you can kneel down next to a vehicle If something falls, it'll fall on the vehicle. Mailboxes are very sturdy. Whatever you have that's available to you, you can use that as a protective obstacle. Trees, they can be okay. It depends on the size of the tree and basically how healthy it is. Rural areas, our friends in the southern counties, again, you want to think about if you were stuck in an earthquake, out in an open area, for most of you, you have plenty of room to just lay down and just stay put. But if you're up on a cliff, or if you're up on a hill, or if you have large things around you, you want to make sure that you're away from them if they fall. Okay, after the earthquake, you want to make sure you're okay. Check the people around you, and then check your whole building. And what we recommend is you walk around inside and outside your whole building. For my house, my gas line comes in off the street, it hits the meter, it goes up into the ceiling and across the space between the first and second floor. My space heater, my furnace is in the middle of the ground floor. So after an earthquake, I know where the gas line is. I'm going to walk around from the meter around the perimeter of my house. I'm going to go inside the house, and I'm going to walk the line where that gas line is to make sure I don't hear or smell gas. Same thing with water, same thing with electricity. So you want to know how to turn your utilities off. There's a lot of great information on how to basically just turn the valve off. You can test it by turning it about 1/8 to 1/4 of a turn. Sometimes those valves get really sticky. So basically on the the gas meter, if the lug is in line with the pipe, that means the gas goes through. If you turn it to the side and then perpendicular against the pipe, you're shutting off the flow of gas. So you want to, if you do that, you want to make sure you actually have to do that. If you turn off your gas, supposedly the only people who can turn on natural gas are PG&E. And if everybody in a region does that, you know how long it's going to be before you get someone to come out and turn on your gas? So no furnace, no clothes dryer, no water heater, none of that. So if you don't have to turn it off, if you don't hear or smell natural gas, if your meter wheels aren't spinning, you should be okay. But again, check. Okay. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, Lars, Rich, this is Anna. There are a couple comments about being aware of rock slides in areas of cities or towns that are up against the hills or the mountains.
Yes,
Rock
our
slides
southern
are an
neighbors.
issue for post Loma Prieta. I think we have some Santa Cruz folks on the line today as well.
Yes, we do.
Yep, and while I'm talking at you, Rich, I'm gonna give you your courtesy 10-minute warning.
Okay, thank you. We're getting there. The other thing that you want to think about doing is going through your house and earthquake proofing it. So in the lower left-hand corner, we have the earthquake picture hangers. There's a little slot there so the wire hangs underneath a ledge. You can put cabinet latches on your cabinet so that the doors don't fly open and the glasses and the dishes don't come flying out. You can use an angle iron to connect things to walls like bookshelves and stuff like that. But actually what works better are these straps. You can attach one to a stud and then one to the top of your furniture or your tall items. And then it gives it a little room to wiggle back and forth. The bad thing about these angle irons is if the wall is moving and shaking, it'll pull this right off the wall or right out of the furniture. So, I mean, you can use this, but it's better if there's a little bit of give. If you live in an upper story building or if you work in an upper story building, and this is especially true for nonprofits, if you're in an office building, when you get your staff together, You want to think about how you would get everybody out of the upper story on all 4 sides. If you have to, you might have to go out a window. We talk about cutting through sheetrock. If you're in bed, if possible, don't close the door. Don't sleep with your door closed. When the wall shakes and shifts, it can pin the door in the frame. So up in your bedroom, you might consider having your handy crowbar or a sheetrock knife or saw. So basically what you do is you go and try the door, it won't open. If you can't pry it open, you go to a wall space and you cut the sheetrock so that you can exit through the wall. So it looks like this. As most of you know, sheetrock studs are 16 inches on center. So if you tap the wall, there's a stud there because it's high pitched. There's no stud there because it's low pitched. So if you go from 16 inches, there's usually a fire stop that crosses midway down the wall. So you want to go below midway and above the outlet, the power outlet. You can create a space that's 16 inches wide and about 2.5 feet tall. You create a square with your knife or your saw, you crisscross it, you hit it, and the pieces of sheetrock fold in. You chip away the corners, you pull them out, you're looking at the back side of the other wall, and as you know, sheetrock is just paper and chalk. You do a score, crisscross, hit it, and it goes through. And then you can go pass through the wall. And that stuff can be repaired. If you get one of those chain ladders, like that one's by Kitty, they're okay. The Buddhist Congress, they got one of those for that building, and they found out that the hooks for the ladder are not wide enough for the railing on the building. So they had to alter their plan a little bit. They have to do it out the back window, not the actual railing. Okay, take care of people with basically access and functional needs, seniors, children, create a buddy system, make sure that everybody has someone who will come and check on them. Recommend that you have 4 types of kits, one in your work, one in your car, one at home, and a backpack that you carry with you. Like when I ride my motorcycle, this is the size of the pack that goes in my motorcycle. It's basically an insulated cooler bag. So I've got some water in there. I've got a space blanket, a little flashlight. I have a whistle, and whistles we recommend are very important. If you're stuck inside a building and you have to call for help, you can only yell for so long before your voice gives out. As long as you can exchange oxygen, you can blow a whistle and people will be able to hear you. And then I've got a multi-tool knife here. It's very handy because it's got a blade. You can actually cut sheetrock with it. It's got scissors so you can cut bandages, and it's got a can opener. If you have non-perishable food cans, you can actually open a can with that thing. It's kind of a pain, but it actually works. Of course, there's the all-important wine bottle opener too.
Hey, Rich, I'm going to jump in. This is Anna.
Yes.
I want to share a good tip. I want to make sure people saw it in the chat box.
Okay.
If you have people, if you're in an upper floor, whether that's in your building, if you're in your offices, or you live in something that has more than one story and you have any mobility or disability issues, you might consider investing in an evac chair. That's from our Independent Living Center. Thank you for that reminder. Take a look at evacuation chairs, either for your home or your office. As Lars Eric is pointing out, sadly, they're not inexpensive. In fact, they're pretty darn expensive and yet essential. So give those things some thought. We are running short on time. This workshop is designed to be 1 hour. So I do want to be mindful of people's time and calendar. If
Okay.
we can have you put any particular questions you might have in the chat box, or any kind of aha moments or tips. Rich, I'm going to give you another minute or two to close out your preparedness tips, and then I think Marcia has some closing comments.
Okay. So we talked about file documents are important. Make copies of them. On the back side of the handout that I passed out or sent out is a checklist of stuff. Go ahead when you have a chance, check off what you have. Think about the things that you don't have. Do you need them? And if you need them, go get them. Practice your plan. They have the Great California Shakeout Drill. I think it's October 17th at 10:17 in the morning. So for crime prevention, we practice the 4 E's: education, engineering, enforcement, and empowerment, which is basically neighborhood watch. So for the active shooter response, we're recommending run, hide, defend, or run, hide, fight. There are a lot of videos on that. This came up after Columbine. We were responsible for training all the schools in the city of San Jose. If you can run, if you can't run, hide. And if you can't hide, you have to fight the guy. So next steps, be prepared. And in conclusion, you cannot control when a disaster strikes, but you can control how you're able to respond to it. So that's basically it. There's lots of resources available, both federal, FEMA, Cal OES. The handout that I gave is from the Association of Bay Area Governments, as well as your local Office of Emergency Management. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much, everybody. Be safe.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Rich, very much. So we're coming right up on 2 o'clock. So we're going to put up the screen that shows the QR code for you to do an evaluation. We do appreciate all of your feedback, and we also need to share it with Bay Area UASI so that they know that you like us.
Hey, Rich, can you advance the next slide, please?
There it is. And then just go back to the website that you went to register for this class to sign up for the other ones that are coming up in the next few weeks. I think we have another one in 2 weeks. Anna knows.
Yeah, and you will all get a follow-up email. The way this QR code works, if you weren't on with us this morning, take your phone out right now, put it in camera mode. You can scan that QR code with your camera. It'll jump you right to our SurveyMonkey. If you don't want to be so techie, wait for our email. We'll shoot you an email with the link to the participation, and we'll attach the calendar for the workshop series. We have not yet posted the additional South Bay classes, but I noticed this morning some of the North Bay classes are posted, the West Bay, and then Ron and Lars Eric will also be sharing their East Bay courses. They're running it kind of a Preparedness U. Is that what you're calling it, Ron? Preparedness U, and it's going to run like a university semester-long course for these.
Yeah, we're calling it Prepare You.
Okay, so you guys are all welcome to join any of the regional trainings. Obviously, if you're here in the South Bay area, we'd love for you to join us on the topics, but if it doesn't work for your calendar, feel free to hop on one of our colleagues' trainings as well. I think that's it for this afternoon. August 13th is Santa Clara County CBO government. August 21st is the Tri-County Government Coordination, Santa Cruz, Monterey, San Benito. And then at the end of August is Incident Command System for nonprofits. So we'll see all 4 counties back at the end of August. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Show us your wave.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Tomarigato.
That's great.
Okay, it's back down to the four of us. Let me hit stop